What happens when a Filipino woman is falsely accused in front of a crowd, with no explanation? How do you react when your dignity is challenged in a public place? Stay tuned to see how Alice, a Filipino entrepreneur, turns an unjust accusation into a powerful lesson on respect and fairness. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories. The Mall of Lakeside stood as a beacon of luxury in the heart of California's bustling cityscape. Its gleaming glass windows reflected the sun's rays, casting a golden hue over the rows of designer boutiques and high-end restaurants that filled its sprawling hallways. The air was alive with the hum of conversation, the click of heels on polished floors, and the laughter of families enjoying a day out. Neon lights illuminated storefronts showcasing the latest fashions, while the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted from upscale cafes nestled throughout the mall. It was a place where the city's elite came to indulge, to shop, to be seen. In the midst of all the glitz and glamour, Alice Ramirez walked through the grand entrance with a quiet confidence. Her simple yet stylish attire, a tailored blouse, dark jeans, and flats, allowed her to blend into the crowd effortlessly. She had the look of someone who knew exactly where she was going, someone who had a purpose. Her steps were measured, her eyes sharp, taking in every detail of her surroundings as if she were already seeing beyond the mall's polished surface. Alice was no stranger to success. A Filipino entrepreneur, she had built her real estate empire from the ground up, turning modest beginnings into a thriving business. She wasn't just a passive observer of opportunities, she created them. Today, as she strolled through the mall's corridors, her thoughts were focused on one thing: finalizing the acquisition of the Mall of Lakeside. It was a strategic move in her ever-expanding portfolio, and today marked the culmination of months of negotiations. As Alice passed the luxury shops and restaurants, she could already picture the changes she would make, the improvements she would bring. This mall was about to become hers, and with it, a new chapter in her journey of success was about to unfold. Alice strolled into the luxury boutique, her eyes scanning the rows of elegant handbags. She was on the hunt for a special gift for a business partner, one who had played a significant role in helping her acquire some of the most valuable real estate properties. The soft hum of classical music filled the air as she carefully examined each item, taking her time to appreciate the craftsmanship. The store was quiet, with only a few other customers present, and Alice felt comfortable in the serene atmosphere. That was until a tall, imposing figure stepped toward her. David, the security guard, had a stern expression on his face, his uniform perfectly pressed. His approach was deliberate, and before Alice could react, he spoke in a tone that was sharp and direct. "Excuse me, ma'am, I need to check your bag." Alice looked up, startled. "I'm sorry, why?" she asked, a tinge of confusion creeping into her voice. "We've had reports of suspicious activity," David replied bluntly, his eyes fixed on her with no sign of hesitation. "It's procedure." Alice felt a flicker of discomfort. She hadn't done anything to warrant such treatment. The boutique was peaceful and she was just browsing. "Suspicious activity," she echoed. "What are you talking about? I haven't done anything." David remained unmoved, his face stern. "It's just policy," he repeated, offering no further explanation. Alice's confusion turned to frustration. She hadn't been in the store long, and there was no reason for her to be singled out. Yet here she was, being treated like a potential thief. "I don't understand. Can you explain why you're doing this?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. But David's expression didn't soften. "I'm doing my job," he said, his tone dismissive. "Just let me check your bag." Reluctantly, Alice placed her bag on the counter. She knew there was no point in arguing, at least not yet. She watched as David rifled through her belongings, her phone, her wallet, and a notebook with her latest business ideas, all laid out for inspection. It was clear she had nothing to hide, but that didn't stop the growing unease. The atmosphere in the boutique had shifted. Customers were now glancing over, whispers beginning to rise, and Alice could feel every eye on her. Finally, after a tense silence, David looked up and muttered, "You're free to go." His tone still lacked any trace of an apology or respect. Alice felt her blood boil. Her eyes narrowed as she lifted her bag from the counter. "That's it?" she asked, her voice cold with indignation. "You humiliate me in front of all these people with no evidence, and now you expect me to just walk away." David barely reacted, shrugging as if her frustration meant little to him. "If you don't like it, you're welcome to leave." Alice's jaw tightened, but she held her ground. The embarrassment she felt was building, but so was her resolve. "I'm not going anywhere," she said firmly. "I want to speak to the manager." The air in the boutique grew heavier as Alice stood by the counter, her bag still in her hands. David had finished searching her belongings, but there was no sign of an apology or any remorse in his expression. Instead, he simply muttered, "You're free to go." Alice's frustration boiled over. She had been treated like a criminal, humiliated in front of strangers for no reason. "That's it?" she asked, her voice sharp. "No apology, no explanation." David remained unmoved, his stance stiff. "It's just procedure," he said, his voice cold and dismissive. "Just procedure." Alice repeated, her disbelief growing. "You accuse me of something I didn't do, humiliate me in front of everyone, and now you expect me to just walk away without an explanation." The murmurs from the other shoppers grew louder. Some exchanged glances while others whispered among themselves. Alice could feel their eyes on her, and it only made the situation worse. She wasn't just angry at David anymore. She was furious that she was being made to look guilty in front of an entire store. She took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure, and then spoke firmly. "I want to speak to the manager." David hesitated, clearly annoyed, but eventually he walked away to call the manager. It didn't take long before Emily, the boutique manager, appeared. She was a woman in her late 30s with a professional air, but as soon as she entered, Alice could tell she was unsure of how to handle the situation. Emily looked between Alice and David, trying to assess what had happened. "What's going on here?" Emily asked, her voice a mix of concern and confusion. David quickly explained. "She was acting suspicious," he said, his tone matter of fact. "We've had reports of shoplifting, so I had to check her bag. It's standard procedure." Alice's frustration reached a boiling point. She had endured enough. "I'm not just a regular customer," she said calmly, her voice still holding a sharp edge. She reached into her bag and pulled out the contract. "I'm in the process of acquiring this entire mall." She handed the document to Emily, who took it, clearly surprised. The contract was stamped with the official seal of the mall, confirming that Alice would officially become the new owner in just a few days. Emily's eyes widened as she read through the contract. "Wait, you're the new owner?" she asked, her voice shaky. Alice nodded, her gaze unwavering. "Yes, I am." The revelation hit like a shockwave. The room fell silent. The other customers, who had been watching the entire scene unfold, exchanged looks of disbelief. David's confident posture faltered, his face turning pale as the reality of the situation sank in. Alice stood still, letting the weight of her words sink in. She hadn't come here looking for drama, but this situation had escalated, and now it was clear. She wasn't just another shopper in the store. She was someone to be respected, someone who had worked hard to earn her place. Emily, realizing the gravity of the mistake, immediately turned to Alice, her expression apologetic. "Miss Ramirez, she started, but Alice cut her off. "I don't need an apology," Alice said, her voice cool but firm. "What I expect is respect, for me and for every other person who comes through these doors. This can't happen again." Emily nodded quickly, her face flushing with embarrassment. "Of course," she said. "We'll make sure this is addressed immediately. I'll personally ensure we review our procedures to prevent something like this from ever happening again." Alice's gaze shifted to David, who stood by, clearly uncomfortable. His earlier arrogance had evaporated, and now he looked like a man who had realized just how wrong he had been. "I trust you'll remember this next time," Alice said, her tone final. David simply nodded, his face red with shame. Alice gave a small nod in return and turned to leave the boutique. As she walked past the other customers, she could feel their gazes shift. The whispers had stopped, and a sense of respect seemed to follow her as she moved through the store. She wasn't just a shopper here. She was the future owner of this place, and she had made sure everyone knew it. Outside the boutique, Alice felt a quiet sense of triumph. This wasn't just about her being wrongly accused. It was about standing up for herself, demanding respect, and making sure it was never forgotten. The Mall of Lakeside was about to become hers, and no one would ever look at her the same way again. The boutique fell into an almost suffocating silence. Alice stood tall, her calm presence a stark contrast to the tension hanging in the air. She knew the moment had arrived, and she was ready to make her mark. "Let me introduce myself," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I'm Alice Ramirez, and in just a few days, I will be the new owner of the Mall of Lakeside." The words echoed through the room, and for a moment, time seemed to slow down. David, the security guard, stood frozen, his expression a mix of disbelief and shock. The other customers, once whispering nervously, now exchanged wide-eyed glances. Emily, the manager, looked down at the contract Alice handed her, her face paling as she quickly scanned the document. The reality of Alice's words sank in. Alice continued, her gaze unwavering. "This contract is the finalized agreement for my acquisition of this mall. The deal will close this week." Emily, still holding the contract, blinked several times in disbelief. You're the new owner?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alice nodded confidently. "Yes, I am, and I'm here to make sure that incidents like this never happen again." Emily, now realizing her mistake, quickly apologized. "I am so sorry, Miss Ramirez. I had no idea. I will make sure this is addressed immediately." Her face flushed with embarrassment. Alice, never one to shy away from the truth, replied, "I don't need an apology. What I need is for everyone to be treated with respect. No one should be singled out or humiliated without cause." David stood at the back of the room, his arrogance from earlier evaporating. He looked like a man who had just realized how wrong he had been. "I didn't know," he muttered, his voice small and regretful. Alice turned toward him, but she didn't acknowledge his apology. Instead, she addressed the crowd. "This isn't just about me. It's about fairness and respect for everyone, no matter who they are. This incident is a reminder that we all need to think before we act." The customers, who had been watching the entire exchange, now regarded Alice with newfound admiration. The whispers shifted, no longer filled with curiosity but with respect. Alice had turned an unjust situation into a powerful statement. Emily nodded vigorously. "Of course, Miss Ramirez. We will take immediate action." Alice gave a small, acknowledging smile. "Thank you. Let's make sure this never happens again." With that, Alice walked toward the door, her posture straight and proud. As she exited the boutique, she could feel the eyes of the customers on her, their gazes now filled with respect. The silence in the room had shifted from judgment to recognition. Alice wasn't just a customer. She was the future owner of this mall, and her presence would not be forgotten. The lesson she had taught everyone in that room was one that would resonate long after she was gone. Respect should never be earned through wealth or status, but through how we treat others. And that lesson, Alice knew, was worth more than anything money could buy. Emily, visibly shaken but determined, approached Alice with a deep sense of regret. "Miss Ramirez, I'm truly sorry for what happened. This should never have occurred, and I promise we will take immediate steps to address the behavior of our security staff. This will not happen again." Alice listened, her face calm yet her eyes firm. "I appreciate your apology, Emily," she replied. "But apologies alone aren't enough. This incident reveals a deeper issue. To ensure this doesn't happen again, I'm requesting diversity and sensitivity training for all staff, as well as a clear, enforceable code of conduct to guarantee that all customers are treated fairly, no matter their background." Emily nodded without hesitation. "Of course, Miss Ramirez. I will make sure that diversity training is implemented right away. We'll also create a code of conduct that is clear, comprehensive, and enforced." Alice looked over at David, the security guard who stood at the back, his face flushed with shame. He avoided making eye contact with Alice, clearly understanding the mistake he had made. Alice didn't dwell on him but instead turned her attention back to Emily. "It's not just about one person or even one incident," Alice said, her voice still steady. "It's about setting the right tone for the entire mall. I want this place to be known for inclusivity and respect, a place where everyone feels welcome, regardless of who they are." Emily's face softened with a look of relief. "You're absolutely right, Miss Ramirez. We will do everything we can to make sure that's the case." Alice gave a small, approving nod. She could feel the shift in the room, the respect from the surrounding customers who had witnessed everything. Some exchanged appreciative glances, while others silently nodded in support. It was clear that Alice had made an impact on them, and the tension in the room had been replaced with a quiet sense of admiration. With the situation resolved, Alice turned to leave the boutique. As she stepped out into the mall, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. She had taken a difficult situation and used it as an opportunity to foster growth and change. She knew that her actions today would ripple through the mall's management, sparking a shift in how they approached inclusivity and fairness. Outside, Alice walked with a quiet confidence. The incident had been unpleasant, but it had served a larger purpose. The lessons learned today, about respect, fairness, and equality, would go far beyond the walls of the mall. Alice had set the tone for a new era at the Mall of Lakeside, and she was confident that her commitment to change would inspire others to reflect on their own assumptions and biases. The real work had just begun, but Alice knew she had already made a powerful difference. As Alice walked away from the Mall of Lakeside, the lessons of the day stayed with her. What had begun as a simple, unjust confrontation had morphed into something much more profound, a moment of change that would ripple far beyond her. The unfortunate incident had revealed an essential truth: everyone deserved respect, no matter their appearance, background, or status. Alice had turned what could have been a frustrating and humiliating experience into an opportunity to teach others, demonstrating the power of resilience in the face of adversity. Her calm demeanor and strength had transformed her dignity into a beacon of change, showing those around her that standing up for what's right could inspire others to do the same. In the face of unfairness, Alice didn't react with anger, but instead chose to rise above it, offering an example of how to handle injustice with grace and conviction. The lesson she imparted was clear: success and respect are not earned only through accomplishments, titles, or wealth. True success lies in how we treat others, in how we lift them up rather than put them down. Alice showed that integrity and fairness should not be earned. They should be given freely, to everyone, every time. Standing up for one's dignity and speaking out against injustice is not just an act of personal strength. It can spark wider change and shape the environment around us. As Alice reflected on the events, she realized that her actions had set something much bigger in motion. The management of the mall, now acutely aware of their need for inclusivity, would take meaningful steps to make sure that the mall became a place where fairness was standard, not a rare exception. The people who had witnessed the confrontation, those who had silently observed or whispered in the background, would carry with them the example Alice set. And perhaps, just maybe, they would start questioning their own assumptions and biases in the future. Even David, the security guard, would remember the lesson. His earlier arrogance had given way to shame, and the realization of his own wrongdoing was a catalyst for self-reflection. The next time he interacted with someone, perhaps he would stop and think about their humanity before making assumptions. In the end, Alice had not only stood up for her own dignity, but she had sparked a larger conversation about fairness, inclusivity, and respect. Her actions would continue to influence others, showing that the true measure of success is not found in wealth or achievements, but in the way we treat others and stand up for what is right. Alice knew that this was the true legacy she would leave behind, and that was more meaningful than anything money could buy.